Wakey, wakey, the Kellogg's football camps are here, all over the country. It's game on. Learn new skills, make new friends, and have loads of fun at your local clubs. Grab your boots for a summer of football at the Kellogg's football camps. Head to www.kellogg'sfc.com and add in the code 2702 to claim a free session today. Welcome to the Football for Kids podcast with me, Darren Rees. In this episode, we're going to be talking about a Chelsea, Spurs and England legend. A man who is in the top 5 goal scorers of all time for England and a man who is still being spoken about today. And that, of course, is the great, the legendary, the absolute goal-scoring machine, Jimmy Greaves. Before we get into this episode on Jimmy Greaves, a few of your shout-outs and your messages. The first one says, "Hey Darren, my name is Lucas and I am from New Zealand. Please, can you make an episode on Forlan?" Well, Lucas, a massive shout out to you, and don't you worry, that one has been added to the list, and I really hope that you enjoy this episode. And as always, it's always nice to hear that we've got listeners all the way over in New Zealand. I'm constantly getting messages from Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Japan, Mexico, and all over the place. So wherever you are listening, please do get in touch. The next one says, "Hi Darren, my favourite football team is Spurs." Well, you are going to like this one. "Can you please do an episode on Son? He is my favourite Tottenham player. I love listening to your podcast. Please can you do a shout out to my football team, Hayden Pumas?" And that is from Harry Bennett, age 7, from Kent. Well, Harry, thanks very much for your message and thank you for being a listener. A huge shout out to you and to your football team, Hayden Pumas. A huge shout out to your coaches as well, who I'm sure do a marvellous job. And Heung-min Son is already an episode which I have done. I think I made that one in April of 2023 because I remember writing it and recording it when I was away at Easter. So hopefully that will help you find it in the 205, 206 plus other episodes which are available for you all to listen to. Well, that's all we've got time for in terms of shout-outs and messages on this episode. If you'd like the chance of getting a shout-out or putting in an episode request, then please ask an adult to send an email to footballforkidspodcast@gmail.com. And also, if you're listening on Apple Podcast, you can get your shout-outs and messages in via a 5-star review on there. Right then, let's get on with this episode, shall we? On the absolutely incredible Jimmy Greaves. James Peter Greaves was born all the way back in 1940 on the 20th of February. He grew up in London and like all kids who went on to play football at the top level, he was obsessed with practicing with his friends and family at every opportunity that he could. When Jimmy was 15 years old, he was spotted by a very well-known football scout called Jimmy Thompson. He was a man responsible for finding lots of footballers. Jimmy Thompson scouted Jimmy Greaves to Chelsea. Greaves joined the youth teams at Chelsea and instantly became a bit of a goal-scoring machine. And when I say a bit of a goal-scoring machine, I'm not using that phrase lightly. In his opening season with the West London club, he scored 51 goals. But to tell you the truth, he was just getting started, as in the following season, he scored 122 goals in one season. Yes, you heard me right, 122 goals in one season. He was scoring hat-tricks and double hat-tricks in pretty much every single game that he was on the pitch for. Greaves was making some serious noise, and all the London clubs had one eye on him at all times, because they knew what a special talent he was. When Jimmy was 17, he was told that he would be starting for the Chelsea men's senior team. His hard work, his perseverance and his unbelievable goal-scoring abilities had earned him a place with the men's senior team. However, back in these days, the money wasn't like it is today. Whilst waiting for the next season to start, Jimmy had to get himself a summer job to earn some pennies, and he'd done some really tough, gritty, hard physical work in a steel company. When the season eventually started and Jimmy made his first division senior debut, he would play against Tottenham Hotspurs, and guess what? Yep, you guessed it, he scored in his debut. The crowd and the press who were present at the match were stunned with this young 17-year-old lad and his incredible skills, his movement and his unwavering confidence. They were speaking about him in the papers the next day like he was Pele. Jimmy Greaves was becoming a popular lad. In Jimmy's opening season in the first division with the Chelsea men's team, he was the club's top scorer in a season where Chelsea finished one place above Arsenal, but in a season where Wolverhampton Wanderers would go on to win the league. How things have changed. In the following season, it's fair to say that Greaves had dynamite in both of his feet as he continued to score goal after goal in match after match. But there was one particular match which he really stood out in, and that was against the then champions Wolverhampton Wanderers, where Jimmy scored not one, not two, not a hat-trick, but 5 goals in one game. The game ended 6-2 to Chelsea. Jimmy was simply incredible. In Jimmy's final season with Chelsea as a men's senior player in 1960, he scored a hat-trick against Wolverhampton Wanderers, Blackburn, Manchester City, Newcastle, Nottingham Forest and scored 5 goals in one game against West Bromwich Albion. In doing this, he made it to 100 goals in the English top division and became the youngest player to do so. Because of how seriously impressive Jimmy was, and because of the goals he was scoring, and because of his age, he was attracting a lot of attention from all the clubs all over Europe, and he was then snapped up by the Italian giants AC Milan for something around £80,000, which is a lot of money today, never mind back in the 1960s. Jimmy left Chelsea as their second highest goal scorer of all time, with 132 goals under his belt, and he left as a club legend. It's said that before Jimmy was to leave London and head to Italy to play for AC Milan, he really didn't want to go. He didn't want to leave his friends, his family, and he didn't want to leave London because London was home to him. However, the deal was done and he had to go. Good money had been paid for him and he was going to be paid well for the move. Jimmy's goal scoring continued as he scored in his AC Milan debut at the world-famous stadium, the San Siro. And Jimmy was still a fantastic footballer, but he was unhappy. He missed home, he missed his friends, and he missed his family. But not only did he have all of that to contend with, but he and the coach did not get on at all. The move to AC Milan was a miserable one for Jimmy. And after just one season, he was very keen to move back to England, and even better, move back to London. Jimmy Greaves was then signed to Spurs, and in his first game in a Spurs shirt, when playing Plymouth Argyle, he scored a brace. Because, well, that's just what Jimmy Greaves did. He scored goals. That game against Plymouth was a game for the reserves, and it was a friendly. In Jimmy's first proper match for Spurs, as a fully fledged men's senior player in a Tottenham kit, he scored a hat-trick, and one of the goals was an incredible flying scissor kick. I think it's fair to say he was back to being happy, as he was in his happy place of London. In Jimmy's first season with Spurs, he and his teammates made it to the FA Cup final. A Jimmy Greaves goal in the semi-finals against Manchester United contributed towards a ticket to the final. And in the final at Wembley Stadium, in front of 100,000 people, it took Jimmy Greaves just 3 minutes to score. Spurs went on to win the match 3-1 against Burnley, and they were crowned the FA Cup winners of that year. In the following season, Jimmy and Spurs made it all the way to the European Cup final. Jimmy had scored plenty of goals in the tournament, and he was a massive reason for them making it all the way to the final. And when the final came, it would be against Atletico Madrid. Tottenham smashed Atletico Madrid 5-1 in front of 50,000 fans in Rotterdam. Jimmy scored 2 goals that game and was truly sensational for every minute he was on that football pitch. However, Everyone has to eventually slow down on a football pitch, lose their strength and their skills, because that is just a natural process of life. And after 9 seasons with Spurs, winning 2 FA Cups and a European Cup, it was time for Jimmy to hang up his football boots at Tottenham Hotspurs. He left the club as a top goal scorer in all 9 seasons that he was there. He was, up until recently, the all-time top goal scorer for Spurs, until Harry Kane beat him a few years ago. Jimmy finished his club career off with the likes of West Ham, Barnet and Chelmsford, to name a few. And as an England player, his career was a special one too. He played for the England under-23s, he played in the 1962 World Cup in Chile, and he scored there, of course. 4 years later, it was the 1966 World Cup, and Jimmy was a part of the winning team. To this day, he is still in the top 5 all-time goal scorers for England and scored 6 hat-tricks for the Three Lions, which still makes him the record holder for the most hat-tricks in an England shirt even today. Jimmy Greaves had one unbelievable career. He scored hundreds of goals and he cemented his name in the history books for England, Chelsea and Spurs. Jimmy is a player who is still being spoken about today and a player who will be spoken about forever. I hope that you've enjoyed listening and learning about the legend that is Jimmy Greaves and his amazing story. So remember, if you know somebody who loves football just as much as you do, then please tell them about Football for Kids. And whether you're playing football soon, watching it on the telly or pitch side, I hope that you enjoy the game. See you next time. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. And remember that Kellogg's have amazing football camps taking place throughout the school summer holidays all across the country. In fact, they're in 73 different locations across the UK. The camps are for 5 to 15-year-olds and are in partnership with the EFL, Manchester City, Celtic and Rangers with FA-approved coaches. To sign up, head to www.kelloggsfc.com and claim a free place today. 18 plus, GB only. Terms and conditions apply.